Greetings, everybody. Gleekon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. I got to start this episode off with an apology here. I noticed a couple episodes back that when I was posting on the channel, I was like, that's weird. The past like 3 videos have all been the exact same length. I was like, that's a crazy coincidence. And so then I checked the videos and I played through them. I was like, are they different? Am I uploading the same video? That was the technical difficulty that I went through first. And then I saw, oh no, they are different. They're all recording. They all seem fine. I jumped around. I skipped around. What happened is I went and messed with some settings one day, and I must have accidentally clicked something on my thing that made it to where even though I'm uploading or even though I'm like editing all this length of video and adding splicing those clips in, I must have set it to where after a certain time the video ends regardless of what's left over. So I think I fixed it now. I just have to pay close attention to that as we go forward. Hopefully I didn't mess up some of the other like audio volume settings that I was messing with. That's amateur hour. What can I say? So I apologize. On the last, I don't think anything. It was far enough along, 22 minutes and 5 seconds. So I did look through and check. I think there's 5 videos that it affects. I think like 2 out of the 5, I get right up to the end where you're not going to hear me talk at the end, but it'll be you get almost the entire story. One of them is real close, but you can at least see the rest of it on the page. Like, so you could always just pause it real quick and read the words yourself. The other 2, you're missing like a couple paragraphs at the end, maybe like a minute worth of content. So it's unfortunate, but the way I do this so that I don't take up all the space of these 600 videos on my thing is once I upload them, that's my, after I've hit a few, I delete them. I don't keep any of the old videos on my actual in hard copy. And this is where that would bite, because otherwise what I could do is just go back to those originals and retweet that editing line and then just repost that if I wanted to. But I would have to re-record those last snippets and then re-splice them, and it would be a lot of work and a lot of upload time for a couple minutes of content. So it is unfortunate. It does hurt the quality a little bit, but hopefully you guys forgive me. All right, so on the last episode, the Galakrond and the dragons, the prehistoric aspects, they fight. Talanixa and most of the other proto-dragons get just wrecked by Galakrond, but the actual 5 heroes, they put up a good fight, and then they kind of try to scatter and disperse, and Alexstrasza pulls Malygos into a cave where they come face to face with an undead dragon. All right, so stay a while and listen to this one. It's the 3rd chapter in part 4 of Dawn of the Aspects. It's called Under the Shadow of Galakrond. Kalik shared Malygos' consternation. He also shared his host's decision to attack without hesitation. Malygos started to exhale. No! Ysera collided with him from the side. Malygos' frost shot deep into the cave. The undead reached for him, or tried to. It also attempted to exhale in turn, but now Malygos saw that its mouth was bound by a strong vine found growing on rock faces in the vicinity. The paws were also bound. Proto-dragons as a species did not use tools of any sort. They had hardly been sentient long enough to develop such interests, and in general did not even need them. However, Ysera had adapted quite well to finding a use for what Malygos would have considered food for some grazer. As his eyes became better attuned to the fainter light, Malygos saw that this animated corpse had once had to hide the same brilliant color as that of Alexstrasza. Clutch brother. Before he could state what appeared obvious, Alexstrasza leaned near. It is not him. We knew this one, but it is not our clutch brother. Ysera had already lost interest in Malygos, her focus on the undead. She guided the fiend back, all the while murmuring to it. Found her with one like this before, Alexstrasza admitted. Another of our family. She cannot find our clutch brother and so helped other family. Malagos had not given much thought to Ysera's earlier obsession, but now suspected that if she had not been able to find the remains, they had likely been dragged off by any number of scavengers or moved by the weather. It was still possible that he was now one of the not living, but Kalek's hosts very much doubted it. All that, of course, did not explain what Malagos saw here, or how it happened to be so very near the site of Talonix's disastrous defeat. Galakrond's roar erupted once more. This time, though, it sounded farther away.
"The smell,"
Alexstrasza explained.
"the smell of the not living smothers ours. Galakrond only smells death nearby."
That at least answered one vital question for Malagos and Kalek.
"But that is not why not living is here."
"No, I had a little hand in that," another voice said. Alexstrasza did not appear startled that there was a fifth figure in the cave, a fact made even more interesting by the speaker being none other than Tyr. Something that did not surprise Malagos when he looked upon the cloaked and hooded form was that Tyr was now several feet taller than before, and much wider. Even then, Malagos and Kalek could not help feeling that Tyr only wore this size because it was convenient for the moment. He still radiated a presence far greater than his current height indicated.
"This is only a slight reflection of him,"
Kalek vaguely recalled. He struggled to remember more, but his own time had become fragments of scenes that were harder and harder to think of as fact. Jaina's face was the strongest bond remaining, and on occasion even she briefly faded from his mind. He was interrupted in his attempt to strengthen his few memories by the undead's muffled hiss. The animated corpse tried to move forward again, but Ysera blocked its path. She continued to speak quietly to the creature as if it were actually her missing clutch brother.
"She must give this up," Malagos finally muttered. "It helped to draw her, and thus her sister, here," Tyr remarked. "In that, her desire to save her missing sibling has merit. I had a different intention when I drew this creature to this cave early on, but fate appeared to have another purpose." "Saw it when we fled from Galakrond," Alexstrasza added. "Ysera wanted to return to Galakrond, wanted to try again to speak peace."
She peered at her sister and the undead.
"Told her I saw our clutch brother. She believed. We followed he to here."
Tyr grunted. "It was a variation of my plan." He did not bother to tell them what that variation was, even though the proto-dragons cocked their heads in confusion.
"It saved your lives. Now we only have to figure out how to save the world." "No Therian and no Stormu," Malagos muttered. "They are not saved."
Alexstrasza's eyes widened. In all the excitement concerning her sister, she had forgotten about the other two males.
"Galakrond, are they—" "I do not know. We fled to the clouds, split up, saw nothing, heard nothing."
The urge to return to the outside and head off in search of the missing pair grew strong enough that Malagos took a step toward the entrance.
"Wait."
Tyr passed by both proto-dragons. He stepped up to the entrance but did not proceed. For a moment, the two-legged creature stared out into the open. Alexstrasza used the delay to tell Malagos,
"He came from nowhere, said he knew you, offered help."
She shook her head.
"I believed all, did not question Tyr."
While Malagos was glad to hear that he would not have to explain or defend Tyr, that subject did not concern him so much at the moment. Instead, he could not help still being bothered by Ysera and her horrific charge. Alexstrasza's sister went on speaking softly to the corpse.
"Tyr says let this be,"
the fire-orange female muttered.
"How long not said." "Not good. Cannot stay here."
They were interrupted by the return of Tyr.
"Galakrond is still in the region, but he is taking a path to the southwest. If he keeps in that direction, he'll soon be far enough away that you can go in search of your comrades."
Malagos snorted.
"We'll find them. What about her?"
Tyr followed his gaze to Ysera.
"There is a facet to her that must be encouraged, must be explored. I feel that this is significant, if not for now, then for the future."
The future was a concept only recently appreciated by Malagos and other proto-dragons, having once been creatures who had purely existed for the moment at hand. Now that concept seemed a very fragile one.
Galakrond may be the future.
His remark did not appear to strike Tyr as dramatically as the proto-dragon expected. Instead of solemnly nodding, Tyr smiled slightly.
I think I've finally chosen well.
The comment both mystified and infuriated Kalak's host.
Riddles! Wingless Tyr talks riddles. Proto-dragon's dying.
No one knows that better than I, the two-legged being answered, much too calmly for Malygos's taste. No one feels more responsible than I. I should have watched. I knew the others were beyond caring. I should have watched, but even I grew distracted. The animated corpse chose that moment to begin a new tirade. Why it had been stirred up was quickly apparent. Ysera had dared to undo the mouth. What she hoped to accomplish neither Malygos nor Kalak could guess, but what she almost earned for her decision was a bite across her throat. Only her quick reflexes kept Ysera from a mortal wound. A red rage overtook Malygos. He shoved past Ysera and attacked the undead. With its paws still bound, its remaining defenses were its slavering jaws and its horrific mist. Malygos shifted to the monster's right. The undead, unable to turn well, could not bring its head around far enough to reach him. Malygos ripped into the dry neck, easily tearing through the rotting flesh and cracking bone. It was enough to cause the next to collapse, taking the head with it. With blackened blood slowly dripping from the savage wound, the torso continued to twitch. Still caught up in his fury, Malygos ripped open the chest. That appeared to be sufficient. The body quieted and slumped. Kalak's mind also swirled with rage, although to a lesser degree. He fought against the desire for blood and flesh, even as a voice tried to reach through the haze that Malygos' thoughts had become. The icy blue male turned on Ysera. She met Malygos' gaze squarely and began talking to him in a tone like the one she had used with the corpse. Malygos at first sneered, only interested in her life. He smelled its freshness, and its hunger grew. Kalak understood that his host had fallen prey to the bite from the earlier undead, and doubted that Malygos would be able to shake himself out of it this time. Worse, Malygos towered over Ysera, who made no move to flee. Then a quiet voice penetrated Malygos' thoughts. Like something out of a dream, it gently touched some remnant of sanity left in Kalak's host and urged it forward. Kalak felt Malygos' hunger begin to subside. His reason started to take dominance again.
We are your friends, Malygos.
At first, Kalak believed the voice belonged to Tyr, for not only did it have an otherworldly quality to it, but who else would have the ability to draw reason back from madness? However, the voice repeated itself. As it repeated itself, he caught its feminine facets. It was Ysera's voice. With the subsiding of the blood rage, Malygos' vision cleared. Now both Kalak and his host could make out that Ysera was speaking. While that certainly made sense, it had been impossible for even Kalak to identify her under such circumstances.
You do not want to do this. You are one who fights for us, not against us.
Listening through Malygos, Kalak noticed how much more succinctly Ysera spoke. She was more intelligent, if also more impulsive than other proto-dragons. Kalak wondered if her small size and inability to fight as well as many normal proto-dragons had contributed to her need to hone her intellect even more than most of her kind. Malygos finally nodded.
I am well.
But for the first time, Tyr was disturbed. Barging past Ysera, the two-legged being angrily peered at Malygos.
You've been bitten. The hunger is within you.
Alexstrasza joined her sister. The elder female appeared almost as dismayed as Tyr. Ysera, on the other hand, looked very interested and at the same time disappointed.
Could have saved them,
Ysera muttered.
Did not have to die in that cave.
Both Malygos and Kalak recalled the infected proto-dragons buried alive by Talanixa. Kalak doubted that those poor creatures, so much farther gone than even Malygos, could have been turned back to sanity, as his host had been. Still, he felt Malygos' guilt grow at the thought that perhaps somehow he could have helped Ysera in that regard. Tyr ignored Ysera, his attention fully on studying Malygos for any sign of the hunger returning.
I've seen others. None fought it down. How long has it been since you were bitten? Several suns.
Tyr's eyes, so very different from those of proto-dragons, narrowed further.
That long, and you haven't succumbed. That bespeaks a strong will, although evidently not strong enough. She kept you from falling too deep into the hunger.
Malygos straightened.
Not happen again!
To Kalak's surprise, his host spoke with the utmost certainty. The dragon could sense a change in Malygos, a change in great part the result of Ysera's efforts to guide him back to sanity. Tyr did not look convinced. He raised a hand to Malygos. The hand glowed white. Malygos instinctively retreated. Alexstrasza hissed. Only Ysera appeared unperturbed. Even though Malygos had seen Tyr appear and disappear and knew he had amazing powers, it was another thing to have those powers focused at him. Only great restraint kept the icy blue male from defending himself.
I cannot sense the taint. Either you have buried it so deep that it should never resurface, or you have purged it somehow from your body and mind entirely. Tyr looked back at Ysera. One must never overestimate appearances, it seems.
Alexstrasza's sister betrayed no evidence that she heard Tyr's compliment. Rather, the slighter female moved back to the ravaged corpse. She muttered something, then began to mourn it as Malygos recalled Alexstrasza mourning the remains of their actual clutch brother. Tyr tolerated this for a very short time.
There are other lives that can be saved. I think it best that we do what we can for those, including your missing friends.
But there is still Galakrond, Alexstrasza pointed out. Even if he is gone now, he will always hunt.
And that is why we must hunt him instead. Malygos was not alone in eyeing Tyr with some suspicion. We hunt him? Talanixa hunted Galakrond. Speak with Talanixus, Tyr. Your point is well taken, proto-dragon. Still, this time will be different. Kalak's host cocked his head. How?
Tyr reached into his cloak and removed what only Kalak recognized, but even Malygos and his sisters understood was a weapon of some sort. Tyr might lack claws and sharp teeth, but he wielded the blunt-ended thing with an ease and skill that the proto-dragons could appreciate. As for Kalak, he had seen many a warhammer in his time, but even the sturdiest of those, used by the dwarves especially, paled in comparison to the huge weapon Tyr held, a weapon that Kalak and his host felt was of greater power than it appeared like the hooded figure himself.
Because I will not stand by this time. When you face Galakrond, I will be at your side.
He returned the hammer to the confines of the cloak, the weapon seeming to vanish into a void rather than simply hanging at Tyr's side. As astounding as that was to Malygos, for Kalak, the act revealed another more urgent sight. Hanging next to where the hammer had vanished was none other than the artifact. Kalak expected to watch the cloak again obscure the bane of his existence, but to his shock, Tyr brought forth the artifact. The proto-dragons peered at the object, Malygos' utter bafflement clearly matching that of the sisters. Various explanations ran through Malygos' mind, an egg, a rock, a piece of star, but none approached what Kalak already knew about the insidious relic. Tyr held out the artifact, which looked to Kalak as if it was smaller than he recalled, toward Malygos. In contrast with the lavender color the blue dragon was familiar with from his own time, now the artifact glowed a faint white, and only in the direction of Kalak's host. Malygos grunted, but before he could react, the glow ceased. Tyr turned to Ysera and Alexstrasza. Again the artifact glowed faintly. Having already seen nothing happen to Malygos, neither sister so much as blinked. Kalak wanted to shout questions, but Malygos asked only one of the many the blue dragon sought the answer to. What did you do? Try to ensure some future. It was as vague a response as Kalak had expected. He would have followed up with a pointed query, but Malygos was not of the same mind. His concerns were more immediate to the overall situation. We go now. We find the others. Tyr hid the artifact again, leaving Kalak to fume silently. Yes, we find them. Galakrond's roar, suddenly close, shook the cavern. Heavy chunks of rock broke from the ceiling, and if not for Alexstrasza quickly covering her head with her wings, she would have been badly wounded. Ysera and Malygos were also pelted, but not as badly. The rock seemed to fall around Tyr without touching him. Still, he did not take the incident lightly. Scowling, he steered the three back from the entrance. His decision proved providential. A major section of the ceiling there crumbled a breath later. It did not bury them alive, but it meant that to escape they would have to crawl out one at a time. And out there, Galakrond continued to rage.
Something has brought him back here, Tyr rasped. Your friends, perhaps.
Whatever the reason, Galakrond appeared determined to stay in the region. The ground shook again and again, creating more showers of rock, but thus far, no new collapses. All 5, including Kalak, knew that their luck could not last much longer. Tyr started back to the entrance, only to have Malygos charge past him. The male proto-dragon thrust out his snout just enough to see what was happening. Galakrond chose that moment to land. The new tremor rocked the landscape. The monstrous proto-dragon's head whipped back and forth in search of something. Kalik and his host both noted that Galakrond looked amused. Kalik had seen that expression before on such predators. The behemoth was toying with his prey, whatever it was. A moment later, that prey also appeared. Not at all to Malygos' and Kalik's surprise, it was Neltharion. The charcoal gray male dived down from behind Galakrond. Neltharion unleashed another roar aimed at the base of Galakrond's skull. The misshapen leviathan shook from the force of the shockwave and fell forward to the ground. Neltharion laughed and came around to attack again.
He's being led to his death, Tyr said from beside Malygos. I knew him to be rash, but not suicidal.
Several of the eyes along Galakrond's torso had been observing Neltharion the entire time. The smaller male reached the location Galakrond evidently waited for. He twisted his head around and opened his mouth to exhale. A thick column of sand shot down his gullet. A fit of coughing overtook Galakrond as he suddenly had to fight for breath. The massive proto-dragon struggled to dislodge the sand from his throat. Another smaller figure dropped down just behind Neltharion. Nosdormu hissed at Galakrond, a taunt that the hacking beast failed to notice.
Excellent coordination, Tyr roared. So I was right about all of you.
Malygos failed to see what so cheered the two-legged being, and Kalik had to agree. Yes, the pair had outmaneuvered Galakrond, but he was hardly defeated. Some impulse drove Malygos out into the open. He was through the half-ruined entrance before anyone could stop him. Alexstrasza called after him, but he did not hesitate. Kalik felt Malygos' intense sense of loyalty urge the icy blue male into the fray. Snout down, Galakrond finally began dislodging chunks of solidified sand. His breathing took on a more normal rate. He started to look up again. Malygos exhaled. As Nosdormu had done, Malygos aimed at the gullet. At the last moment, Galakrond sensed him. However, in turning to face Malygos, Galakrond only gave him a choicer target. The frost hit the same eye that Neltharion had earlier attacked. By itself, the frost might not have slowed Galakrond, but it aggravated the injured eye. Hissing, the enormous proto-dragon shut both eyes. Of course, that did not leave him sightless. Several of the extra eyes now glared at Malygos. Yet no sooner had those orbs fixed on Kalik's host than fire assailed the shut ones. Alexstrasza soared over Malygos, the plume of flame she exhaled continuing. Her attack kept the main orbs from reopening and drew the other eyes from Malygos. Neltharion chose then to attack some of the extra eyes. He first roared at them, and then when he was able to get near enough, he tore away two in successive swipes of his hindclaws. But the reckless male failed to pay sufficient attention to some of the extra limbs. Perhaps seeing them as little other than useless growths, Neltharion let his tail come too close to one dangling leg. The paw seized his tail and held on with a tight grip. Neltharion tried to back away, which only brought him near another paw. The second grabbed one of his hind legs. Galakrond opened his eyes. Mouth widening, he turned to swallow the captured morsel. Malygos and Ysera tried to draw his attention again, but Galakrond cared only to devour Neltharion. Their attacks, now striking mostly the scaled hide, did little more than cause their foe to twitch slightly as his jaws neared the charcoal gray male. A shadow swept over Malygos, immense enough to make him think that perhaps another Galakrond came up behind him. He started to look over his shoulder, but the shape moved so quickly that both he and Kalik had no time to ascertain what it was before it reached Galakrond. A thick form that Kalik initially identified as a fist as large as a full-grown proto-dragon hit Galakrond on the side of the jaw opposite from Neltharion. It hit with such force that the behemoth stumbled away from the blow. Only as the shape receded did both Kalik and his host catch enough of a glimpse to see that it was not a fist but the head of a hammer that had made the blow, a hammer identical to what Tyr had wielded but many times the size of the one they had seen earlier. And while Malygos had missed it, Kalik had noticed that there was a hand gripping the hammer, a hand also much larger than previously seen. But just as the hammer withdrew, Malygos' attention was caught by Ysera, who darted dangerously close to the briefly stunned Galakrond's jaws. However, instead of seeking the gullet, Ysera rose before Galakrond's nostrils and exhaled. Galakrond grunted. He hesitated. The paws holding on to Neltharion seemed to lose control. He pulled away and fled from Galakrond. As he did, Alexstrasza and Ysera also turned away.
Flee to the south,
Tyr called from somewhere beyond the icy blue male's sight. Tyr's resounding voice well matched his titanic proportions, which made his sudden command more shocking to Malygos. All appearances were that they were at last winning. But as he thought that, Galakrond began to stir again. Calic's host veered away. He saw his companions, Nosdormu included, awaiting him in the south. Of Tyr there was still no sign. Malygos picked up the pace. Behind him, Galakrond roared. Malygos flew faster. He joined the others as they raced on. "Tyr!" Malygos called. In response, a sound that echoed like thunder rocked them from the direction of Galakrond. A second later, the Leviathan roared again, but this time from farther away. Malygos almost halted, but Malygstraza shook her head.
"Tyr says fly south. Keep flying."
With much regret, he obeyed. He did not entirely understand this being called Tyr, but he recognized that the two-legged creature knew far more than he or any of the others did. Their hopes of defeating Galakrond rested greatly on Tyr. Tyr, who at this moment risked himself to help the five escape. And for Calic, who was forced, wherever his host went, to fight, despite the fact that he would have flown in the opposite direction, it was the same Tyr who carried with him the artifact and the blue dragon's fading hope that he would free himself of these visions with his mind intact. See, I didn't see exactly where. It says where Neltharion escaped. That's what I'm kind of looking at, like, oh, I see. There you go, right there. He pulled away. I kind of, when I read that, I didn't realize the he was referring to Neltharion. But yeah, it would make sense to. Okay. All right, so that's cool. We have a Mega Super Titan Tyr fighting Galakrond, and they're escaping. It looks as though, I mean, he's used the artifact on 3 of them. So I wonder if that's going to slowly unlock some powers, or it will once all 5. And my prediction is that when this all comes through, Calic is going to realize that that artifact is what gave the dragons the aspects, the powers of being aspects. And once he realizes that, he's going to take it to them and use it to restore their power. That's my prediction. All right, cool. We got another episode in the pipe, 5x5. Thanks everybody so much, as always, for watching and for listening, and I will see you next time on Lore of Warcraft.